From the Clark Ford Studio in Oxford, Mississippi, MBW Digital proudly presents the Oxford Exxon Podcast.
I'd say thanks for tuning in, but why am I going to give you a round of applause for something that you're supposed to do, to be frank?
And now, here are your hosts, Chase Parham.
That broadcast school has really paid off.
And Neal McCready.
I deserve to be on TV.
Chase Parham, Neal McCready here with, I guess, a Clark Ford Sunday conversation. We're taping this currently 10:22 a.m. I am in the Clark Ford studio. Neal McCready on the road back from Baton Rouge last night. Ole Miss losing to LSU 45-16. We're going to talk probably 20 minutes or so today. Just a podcast, instant analysis type thing where we're just kind of go through some of this stuff because it wasn't just that Ole Miss lost. It was how Ole Miss lost. It was the manner of their lack of composure. You can read about that at mortrebelgrove.com. We've got multiple videos up. We've got a thing I wrote this morning regarding their lack of composure and discipline on the field, and Neal saying that some of the decisions that Matt Luke wanted to make after the year could get expedited a little bit. So we'll go through that and more on this here in a second. Neal, I know you didn't get a lot of sleep, trudging back toward Oxford, but you know, it was a game last night where going in, it was easily expected that LSU was going to win the football game. Ole Miss gets an early lead, and then really from that point, it wasn't just that they were dominated. It wasn't just that they were beaten. They were a discombobulated football team that, for the first time this year, looked poorly coached, even in body language, and then also had a lot of the talent issues exposed, even against an offense that came into the night 14th in the SEC.
Yeah, I catch the majority of my thoughts today being about things that are not about the talent. If people still want to have a debate about there being a talent issue on this team, I'm to the place where I don't know how to further that debate. I don't know how to go any to take it to another place. To me, that the lack of talent in certain spots on the roster is so glaring that it's undebatable. Now, there are others who debate it, and that's at some point, you know, anytime, if you and I are having an argument, there does come a point in the argument where one of us will say, hey, let's just agree to disagree. And I'm there with the talent. It's the other things. It's the things that have nothing to do with talent. It's discipline. It's composure. It's class. It's the way you carry yourself. Things that are not limited to talent. Ole Miss got beat in those regards by LSU Saturday, and I do mean completely. And if I'm an Ole Miss fan, that's the most bothersome thing to me. That the coach on the other sideline is Ed Orgeron. Ed Orgeron. That's not. You know, we're not talking about one of the elite coaches in the country here. His team was more composed. His team was calmer. His team played with more of a sense of direction. Yes, they're more talented, no question about it. But there was more to that game than, as you just said, a lot more to that game than just talent. And for Ole Miss, and I've covered a lot of good Ole Miss football in 11 years, and I've covered a lot of bad Ole Miss football in 11 years. That was very near the top of the list for unacceptable performances, difficult to watch performances. And if I'm an Ole Miss fan, I don't know that I can stomach that performance. And as you mentioned, we're 5 games into a season. There's still 8 weeks and 7 games left in this season. And I don't know how many more times you can look like that on the field without it forever tainting your reputation and without it costing you fans to some degree on a quasi-permanent basis. I think this season has indeed hit a crossroads, and I don't know that it has anything to do with wins and losses right now. It's the way that they look. This is a long-winded answer. If you're an Arkansas fan today, you're not happy with your wins and losses. You're not happy with the loss in Dallas, but you're a little encouraged. You saw some signs of hope yesterday against Texas A&M. If you're a Florida fan, you know you're not winning the East this year. But you're excited today, not just because your team won in Starkville, but because of the way they won in Starkville. If you're a Tennessee fan today, you're beginning to accept this is going to be a bad season, but you're a little encouraged, not a lot, but a little encouraged by what you saw in Athens yesterday. If you're an Ole Miss fan today, there was absolutely nothing you could take out of Saturday night to be encouraged about. Nothing.
No, it was, I mean, everybody knows this by now, but just recapping for anybody that's listening to this that hasn't been on the site, Ole Miss has 167 yards in penalties yesterday. That is the second most in school history for Ole Miss. That is the most against an LSU opponent in school history. That 1954 Ole Miss team that we all remember had 182 yards against Kentucky back more than how many ever years ago, 70 years ago. But it's not even just the penalties. Ole Miss taunting LSU late in the game, way down on the scoreboard. There's late hits. There's including one that, frankly, was just out of frustration more than anything else on Joe Burrow as he walked in the end zone late in the game as well. I mean, it was an unpoised team. It was an undisciplined team. And, you know, it went completely contrary to the buzzwords, the culture that Matt Luke's been trying to instill in this program since last August. He always talks about blue collar and doing it the right way and working hard and the little things. Last night was a complete abomination when it came to the little things. Ole Miss was terrible with anything that could be classified as a little thing, and it became a huge thing because, look, yeah, talent's not what our conversation's about today. We've had that. We're not going to whatever. But point being, because of that talent, even against mid-level and low-level SEC teams, Ole Miss has got to be efficient and they have got to play clean to be competitive. They did not do that last night. That effort last night will get them beat in Little Rock. That effort last night will get them beat in Nashville. And if they're not careful, that effort, exactly as was, will get them beat Saturday at home against ULM in what is almost now destined to be a crowd very similar to Kent State 2 weeks ago. And, you know, that's one of the biggest black marks of this whole thing because Ole Miss filled it up against Alabama, the Southern Illinois crowd, whatever. Against Alabama, they filled it up. By halftime, more than half the crowd's gone. Against Kent State, even though a lot of factors were working against them, we're talking 25,000 actual fans in the stands. And now next week, they come back home against ULM after getting embarrassed in Baton Rouge last night. It's going to be another below 30,000 actual crowd, even though the game's at 3 o'clock. So this thing becomes all about perception. This thing becomes all about reality. We talk about one or the other. No, it's both here. And then at some point for Ole Miss, as they figure out how to, A, improve the program, and B, make the pocketbook as good as possible, it becomes about finances because you just can't sustain that week after week after week inside your home stadium.
Yeah, I'm going to take a look. I agree with everything you just said, and so I'm not going to repeat it. I'm going to go even bigger picture. We have a tendency, we being everyone, people who cover programs, people who cheer for programs, people who are inside programs, to focus on wins and losses and to look at the next game on the schedule and say, is that winnable? Is that losable? Is that whatever? Hey, they're not bowl eligible. They're not playing for a championship this year. I'm not as convinced that the big picture isn't a lot more important than the small picture. And in the big picture, here's the problem. That product that you put on the field last night is not attractive. It's not attractive to prospective student athletes. Not attractive to fans.
It's not attractive to prospective students in general in a year that Ole Miss's enrollment is down partly because of the football program.
And so Saturday, while there's going to be we'll write about the ULM game and all that stuff and letdowns and blah, blah, blah and all that stuff. And we'll do all that because that's what we're supposed to do and we'll do it. If you're Ole Miss Saturday, and when I say Ole Miss, I mean he's still the chancellor. Jeffrey Vitter and Ross Bjork and the people that run that place and the people that make decisions that matter, you need to walk through the Grove on Saturday. There will be plenty of plots available. You need to walk through the square on Saturday. There'll be a lot of parking spots available. And then you need to walk into that stadium and you need to really soak in all of the empty seats and ask yourself, what can we do to fix this? Because that's not tolerable for long. And if you can't recruit into your program, then it it can always get worse, and it will get worse. And you and I always talk about, it's kind of a stereotypical, a little bit intentionally hyperbolic scenario where in our scenario, the wife really doesn't want to go up to Oxford. She'd really rather stay home. If you're one of those wives, Saturday's a real good opportunity for you to make your case. And once you lose fans, it's hard to get them back. And the product that's getting put on the field right now is really, I would think from a fan standpoint, very difficult to absorb. Very difficult to justify, hey, I'm going to get in the car on Saturday in Jackson, and I'm going to drive 2.5 hours to Oxford to go to a game, to drive back, when I could hang out at home and catch up on things, watch another game, relax, watch the playoffs, watch whatever, go to dinner, grill, whatever it is. I think that's the bigger issue. And then for a prospective student athlete, is that really the program, what got put on the field on Saturday? Is that what I want to be a part of if I have options? And that's some of the hard answers that have to come. And I'm not the guy calling for Matt Luke right now. But the truth is, Matt Luke inherited this staff. I don't think it's the staff that he wanted, it's my opinion. I don't know that. I could be well wrong. I think there are going to be wholesale changes coming at the end of the year. But if you put that product out on the field too many more times, that's yours. And I don't know how they fix it, how they go about the mechanics of making changes on a staff that is full of coaches on multi-year contracts. But you've got to do something to make sure that the product that got put on the field on Saturday night in Baton Rouge doesn't reappear. And I'm not talking about the missed tackles or the bad angles. I'm talking about the stuff you talked about. The down 4 touchdowns, taunting the opposing quarterback after he scores a touchdown. Late hits. Jumping off sides on 4th and 1 where you know that's what they're trying to do. Illegal procedure on the first snap of the game. Pass interference where the defensive back doesn't even look backwards. The plays that are just reflective of, frankly, poor coaching.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's not about wins and losses. Like you said, it's about optics. It's about what it looks like. It's about fans being excited or not being excited as this thing moves forward into future seasons. Because, look, they could beat Arkansas, they could lose to Arkansas, they could beat Vanderbilt, they could lose to Vanderbilt, ULM, whatever. But, that's completely irrelevant to what we're talking about. But everything optically, intangibles, are spiraling on Ole Miss last night, and that even continued into postgame. Phil Longo, the offensive coordinator, doesn't show up to postgame media interviews, and it's one of those deals. It's another little thing, but it just is a lack of professionalism. It is it's a lack of attention to detail. It's weird, frankly. I mean, I told you last night, I said, look, nobody feels sorry for the media, and I'm not worried about what he was going to say or not going to say. But I just don't recall that in the past. I mean, there were nights where Dan Werner wanted to absolutely punch us. Showed up every time. I just don't recall that. Yeah. It's weird.
Oh, let me weigh in on this real fast because I was down there. So here's how this works. Last night, after the game, there's a visiting media room. Matt Luke came in. He gave a press conference. It was fine. It was what it was. We go over into an area right behind where the Ole Miss locker room is in Tiger Stadium. And Wesley McGriff, to his credit, got there fairly quickly. Whether you like his answers, didn't like his answers, is not part of this conversation. He spoke. He answered the questions that were asked of him, and he left. Mohamed Sanagu came, and he answered some questions. You'll hear that in 10 Weekend Thoughts. Jordan Ta'amu came. He answered questions. 3 minutes, he left. We were told repeatedly over this 30-minute period. Now, Chase, keep in mind, we're talking 12:45, 1 o'clock in the morning. We're told in this period that Longo's coming. I asked Kyle Campbell, the Ole Miss Sports Information Director, is Longo coming? Yes, he's coming. We waited, And we waited, and we waited. Again, 1 o'clock in the morning. And then Kyle finally came and said, Longo's not happening. The buses have to leave, and he's the last one in the locker room. It's unacceptable. It's disrespectful. It's not about the media, except we are the people that cover the program. And I'm not one to bitch about access and stuff. I never do. I never do. But don't tell me at 1 o'clock in the morning someone's coming and then they don't come. At 1 o'clock in the morning. That's disrespectful. Which, frankly, was sort of par for the course last night.
And more.
Sorry to interrupt.
No, you're good. And even more strange because I think we made this comment last week off air. We were just kind of talking because you weren't at the Kent State game. Typically, Longo is the very first person in the locker room, so it becomes even more magnified when it's such a 180 and change of behavior.
Yes, and look, there's criticism coming. There's criticism on the way. I mean, what do you know? That's part of being. If you don't like that, if that's not what you want, don't sign up in the SEC. That's part of the deal. If you win in this league, there's praise. If you lose in this league, there's criticism. It's been like that for a long time, and it's going to be like that for a long time. Those are not words of brilliance from my mouth. Those are just true facts. You know that coming in. My complaint last night was not that Phil Longo didn't talk to us. It's that at 12:45 in the morning, we're standing there waiting for something that they had no intention to happen. Just tell me that. Phil Longo has declined to comment tonight. Fair country. There's going to be some criticism of that, but okay. I don't honestly know what was going to be asked last night, other than your thoughts.
Yeah, from an on-field standpoint, I mean, they had the constant criticism of Scotty Phillips. Frankly, was really, really, really good last night. Dang good last night. Very good up the middle. And at one point in the game, as it got away from them, I think they had 4 3-and-outs in a row where they just kind of chunked the ball deep the whole time.
Yeah, I don't understand their offensive philosophy. To your credit, you were the first person who said it. You were saying it in the first quarter of the Texas Tech game, that you can't keep doing that. Just going deep. And I know they call it chasing space or taking what's available or that arrogant crap that we get week after week about, well, if we have a one-on-one, we're open. Greedy Williams begs to differ. There was a time last night, into the first half, the ball inside the 10, they tried a one-on-one on Greedy Williams. Maybe the best corner in the league. Maybe the best corner in the country. And then it's third and, because of some clock management issues, 3rd and goal at the half-yard line, and you're down 28-3, and you kick a field goal. Anyone watching that game knew they weren't winning that game. I don't criticize the decision as much as I think that was a spot on the field, and I think if you go back and watch body language, you'll see it. That's a spot on the field where you need to send a message as a coach that, you know what, we're in this together, and we're going to go get that damn half yard. And if we don't get it, we're going to go into the locker room, and we're going to look each other in the eye and talk about why we can't get a half yard.
Mm-hmm.
Instead, they kick a 18, 19-yard field goal. It's 28-6 at the half. And I don't think you're kidding anybody at that point. Anybody watching that game knew at that point the odds, the statistical odds of Ole Miss coming back and winning that game down 28-6 at halftime, the odds were under 10%. I don't know who you're kidding at that point. It's again, it's just, to me, it's like, it's your word, and it's a good word, but it's one of those general words that a lot of people, self-included, maybe you included, that it's the optics of it. It's the way that it looks. It's the way that it's perceived, and that's a very intangible thing. You just sort of know it when you see it or know it when you don't see it. And the optics were poor last night.
Yeah, on a day in the league where a lot of early tenured head coaches had their programs with at least somewhat of an identity, Ole Miss didn't have one. I mean, that's the bottom line when you take it a little more macro level. But
and that's the issue. That's the issue here. I don't believe I'm leveling today. I'm letting it go. I'm being honest. I don't believe that Matt Luke views Phil Longo's offense. He's never told me this. I'm absolutely speaking out of an opinion. I don't believe that he views that offense as the offense that he would run. And I don't think Wesley McGriff is the defensive coordinator that Matt would hire. I don't. I could be wrong, but I don't. And that's where this decision that was made to take the interim tag off Matt Luke and yet sort of hamstring him is whether it was his decision or whether it was a decision that was sort of pushed on him or encouraged of him. It's a decision that, as we sit here today, they got to get it fixed. And 8 weeks more of this, even if you scatter a few wins into it, is going to be kind of a difficult stain to get off.
Yeah, next week, the week after. I mean, really, you can't even get it off even in any semblance until 2 weeks from now in Little Rock. And we'll see. They've got to do better than they did. Another game, like you said, there's 7 to go, for better or for worse at this point for Ole Miss. They're 3-2, but as I wrote this morning, that feels more like an influence of scheduling than anything else, because that Texas Tech that Texas Tech game seems like a decade ago.
Yeah. And it was a nice win, and history shows it to be a nice win.
Yeah.
But they've also beaten Southern Illinois and Kent State and gave up 500 and some odd yards against Southern Illinois. Gave up 570 yards yesterday. For all the talk about the defense getting better, the defense is not getting better. That was an LSU team that entered the game 14th in the league in total offense. And they got roughly 280 in the air and 280 on the ground. I don't have the exact numbers in front of me.
292 and 281, I believe.
Something like that. Lit them up. Balanced. Got whatever they wanted.
Also on the field forever because the offense does not hold the football.
No.
At all.
The offensive plan does not mesh well with the defense that has personnel issues and depth issues. It just doesn't. And there were some times last night that the defense, believe it or not, got off the field.
Mm-hmm.
The defense caused 2 key turnovers, or else LSU scores in the 60s. And yet the offense can't take advantage.
Probably a little frustrating. I mean, not really defending or anything else. Probably a little frustrating for Wesley McGriff because offensively, I think they have the personnel to slow this thing down a little bit and run the football. Again, Phillips has looked very, very competent. The offensive line, at least up the middle, does a pretty good job of run blocking. I mean, it's kind of there, yet there's this persistence to see how many one-on-one fade routes they can throw.
And I think Matt Luke, I could be wrong. Again, I've not had this discussion with him. I'd love to have it. I think his stamp on an offense would be more, and people hate this word, so I hate using this word and everything else gets lost. A little more pro-style, a little more balanced, but a lot more physical.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I mean, that's kind of what's been in his past DNA, and that would make sense. Again, we don't know from his mouth, but there's no reason not to believe that. But nonetheless, there is.
I mean, hell, he might want to run the fun and gun and the wide open,
the run and shoot
shotguns. Yeah, I mean, I have no idea. I've never asked, but I don't think this is what he would want to do. I could be wrong, and defensively, they got to go get players, and then you just got to get better coached. Their linebacker play in pass coverage is, I mean, LSU runs a underneath route, and the confusion is just, and I don't think that's John Sumrall. I don't, because John Sumrall's linebackers at Troy were really good. I think it's what happens when you have players playing linebacker who were not recruited to play linebacker, and you have young players that are hitting a little bit of a wall, and it's just you've got way too many reps. Defense is on the field too long. There's just a lot there. There's a lot there, and and I know you got to go as we finish. This what's left of this season. What's most important for Ole Miss, in my opinion, is not somehow finding a way to 6 wins or 5 or 7 wins or that number. It's the way you look. It's the way you look. And they've got to start looking better. They've got to put a different product on the shelf than the one that they put on the shelf last night. Because no one's buying that product that got put on the shelf last night. No one.
Yeah.
Not in a competitive market. Not in a competitive marketplace.
Right. Bottom line there, we'll have more in the morning with our Oxford Exxon podcast as scheduled for Mondays. And then Matt Luke will talk to the media tomorrow at 11:30. Neil will have 10 weekend thoughts later today as well at rebelgrove.com. So just a few things for you this morning. We'll talk to you tomorrow.